Hey guys, welcome back. The 2023 hunting season is officially over here in Michigan. I hope that many of you guys were able to accomplish your hunting goals this past season, but we are now into the 2024 habitat season. So in today's video, I want to talk to you guys about 3 things that you guys can be doing on your property to increase your chances of having success in the upcoming season. And these 3 things are things that you guys can be doing within your timber with a chainsaw. Now, there are a lot of different habitat improvement projects that you guys can be working on your properties right now. There are not just 3. These are just 3 things that we're trying to tackle on our property early into the 2024 habitat season. As I'm sure most of you have noticed, we haven't really had that harsh of a winter yet. And I'm sure that it's still coming, but as of right now, temperatures have been fairly mild, giving us a great opportunity to get back into the woods to get some cutting done. And it's not that you can't cut when temperatures are lower, well below freezing, but depending on how much snow you have, what are you trying to accomplish, cutting when the temperatures are a little bit warmer, you don't have 3 feet of snow, it's a lot easier to move around. And again, depending on what your goals are, if you're trying to hinge cut trees, you'll likely have a higher success rate when the temperatures are a little bit warmer. And the first habitat improvement project that you guys can be working on your properties would be to create or enhance bedding areas or bedding opportunities on your property. Early on into the habitat season is a great time to start cutting your timber to either create or enhance existing bedding areas on your property. While I'm not going to dive too far into the details on how we're creating each one of these different habitat improvements in this video, just so it doesn't go too long, we can make a separate video on each one of these to go into that detail, but I will give you guys a brief summary on each one. And for bedding areas, the objective or our goal is to increase the chances that the deer are going to bed down and spend a majority of their daylight time in these locations. And if we're going to encourage that behavior, we need to make sure that this area has a lot of cover, that it has a lot of woody browse, food that these deer can consume throughout the day. And because this bedding area was created in what was an open hardwoods, closed canopy forest, park-like woods you could see for hundreds of yards, the first thing that we had to do was drop the larger, more mature trees. And there are a few reasons as to why you want to drop those larger diameter trees first. And a lot of it has to revolve around the fact that in this area, we want to start hinge cutting those smaller diameter trees. If we were to only hinge cut these smaller diameter trees before dropping the large trees, we would still be getting sunlight to the forest floor. Not very much, but there would be sunlight coming through. However, over time, those larger trees, they would continue to grow and they would fill in that hole. They'd fill in the gap, which would be closing off the forest floor to the sunlight. And that's going to choke out our hinge cuts, killing them. And so if we realized that was happening after the fact and we decided, okay, we got to start dropping these larger trees now we're dropping our larger trees onto these smaller hinge cuts, and they're not going to withstand that. Those large trees are going to blow right through them, destroying the hinge cut bedding area that you worked hard to create. So once you have those larger, more mature trees on the ground, you can start working your way down to these smaller diameter trees. And if you're comfortable doing so, you can start hinge cutting them. And right now, because we're having a milder winter, temperatures are a little bit warmer, it's a great time to get out and hinge cut before the temperatures get too cold and those trees get stiff, they get brittle, they tend to snap a little bit more when you start getting into those really cold temperatures. But I think last week we're in the mid 40s. Great day to go out and hinge cut. You'll notice on those warmer days, your success rate is going to be much higher. One more thing I want to touch on with bedding areas in this video before we move on to the next improvement is something else that we're working on our properties and something that you guys could be tackling at the same time. And that's just making sure that you have free movement within your bedding areas, that these deer never feel claustrophobic. You have enough entrances and exits. As you start taking down more trees within any given area, eventually you're going to have dead ends. You're going to have kind of a blockade in there. And that's not something that you want in a bedding area. You want these deer to be able to move in any direction. It's okay to have cover on the ground, but you don't want to have it so tight that these deer feel claustrophobic. So every once in a while, you are going to have to cut through some of your down trees. I'm not sure if you guys can see this behind me or not, but hopefully you can. If not, I'll try to get some B-roll. But I cut a lot of trees down along this line and it created a dead end. And so what I ended up doing is I hinge cut a few trees over top of this pile, and then I cut underneath my hinge cuts, cut those logs that were on the ground to make sure that I had another entrance or another exit into this bedding area. So I have entrances behind the camera, I've got entrances to my left here, and hopefully you guys can see I have another entrance that I just cut behind me. So that's just something you want to make sure that you're doing now at the same time, is just making sure that you have enough entrances and exits into your bedding area. If there's ever an area that you're noticing the deer aren't really going into very much and you're trying to figure out why, one reason might be because they feel claustrophobic, and if they went in there, they wouldn't really have a lot of different ways out. So if a predator went in there with them or chased them in there, they would be trapped, and they don't want to ever be trapped. So just make sure that in any given place in your bedding area, there are multiple ways out. All right, the second habitat improvement project that you guys can be working on your properties early into the 2024 habitat season would be either creating or enhancing a staging plot or a kill plot within your timber. If you're trying to create a kill plot, a pass-through plot, staging plot, micro plot, poor man plot, these come in a lot of different names, but if you're trying to create a small food plot within your timber, you're going to have to take down trees. And again, now is a great time to get out with a chainsaw to start taking down trees. For those of you guys that are putting your smaller plots in open fields, areas that are already receiving a lot of sunlight, then obviously the initial steps are going to be a little bit different. But for those of us that are putting our food plots within the timber, we have a lot of work to do in the beginning stages of that food plot. And a lot of it just revolves around taking down trees to make sure that we're getting enough sunlight into our food plot, especially on the southern side of our food plot. And depending on the size of the food plot that you want to put in and how many trees you need to take down in order to create that food plot, it might take you several weekends of heading out to your property to cut trees down and remove those trees from the area. Even though we would love to spend every day working on our properties, working on these different habitat improvements, that's just not reality. Life is very busy. Everyone has different obligations that they have to meet. And so when you have time to get out to your property, you just want to make sure that you're making the most of it. And if you have a goal of creating a plot in the woods this coming habitat season, it's going to take a long time to take those trees down and to get them blocked up and moved off to the side of your food plot. So you just want to make sure that you're tackling that early on into the habitat season before you're getting into spring and you're getting into summer, when potentially you might need to start planting that food plot. And for those of you guys that already have established food plots within the timber and might have noticed that the food plot isn't receiving enough sunlight, again, now is a great time to get in there to start cutting down more trees, especially on the southern side of your food plot. As we push into fall and the earth rotates, that sun is going to be further or lower on the southern side of your food plot. So if you have a lot of tall trees on the southern side of your food plot, that's going to really shade out your food plot in the fall, and your food plot's not going to perform as well as it could have. So just make sure that you're receiving enough sunlight and you're knocking down the trees on the southern side of these smaller food plots. One more quick tip on this one before we move to the next improvement. As you guys are taking down the larger trees to create these smaller kill plots, try to notice if you have any smaller trees or shrubs within that area that you could leave either as structure or potential scraping locations. As I was taking down the large red oaks and the hard maple to create this small 1/8 acre food plot, I did notice that I had a small beech tree that was kind of leaning on its side. And hopefully you guys can see it, but I left that there because I know over time, deer are going to start using that to communicate with one another. Deer love to scrape under beech trees, and since I had a small one here in the middle, I left it. So right in the middle, that's going to draw deer right there. They're going to communicate there. They're going to scrape there, as they're feeding within this small secluded food plot. And the final habitat improvement project that we're going to talk about in this video that you guys can be doing right now on your properties to increase your chances of having success this upcoming season would be to create deer trails or enhance travel patterns on your property. In order for deer, and especially those older bucks, to move from the bedding areas to the food sources on your property during daylight, they have to have secure travel along the way. If you know where your food sources are located on your property, as well as where the bedding opportunities are, then you need to make sure that you have a secure travel route from those bedding areas to that food sources to increase the chances that those bucks are going to move during daylight. And one way that you can do that, especially if you're in a timber setting, is by taking down trees. The area or the travel route from point A to point B needs to be thicker. It needs to have a higher stem count. And in order for there to be a higher stem count, that area needs sunlight. And if you're in a closed canopy woods, the first thing you're gonna have to do is take down trees. And again, you're gonna wanna take down those larger trees first. And once you do have those larger trees down, which is going to allow the most sunlight to hit the forest floor, then you can start hinge cutting those smaller diameter trees. Now, a few things that you want to make sure that you're doing. When possible, you want to make sure that you're dropping your trees perpendicular to your deer trail. That's going to do a few different things. One, it's not going to block your trail. Two, it's going to discourage the deer from leaving your trail. They're going to have a nice easy path, and if they leave the trail, they're going to have to either duck under or jump over this hinge cut or drop tree. They're going to much rather stay on that nice, easy, manicured trail. Another thing you want to make sure that you're doing is you're not dropping every single tree along your trail. You want to drop maybe a few trees off to one side, go a little ways, drop a few trees the other way. This just ensures that the deer can get on and off your deer trail when possible. They have exits, they have entrances. We don't want these deer to ever feel trapped or again, feel claustrophobic as they work up and down our trail. But guys, that's going to do it for today's video on 3 different habitat improvement projects that you guys can be working on right now on your property. I hope you guys had a great Christmas, a great New Year's, and we will see you guys in the next video.